I'm Jason Klom, and this is the Comedy on Vinyl podcast. The year is 1969, the album, How Can You Be in Two Places When You Aren't... oh my God, how can you be in two places at once when you aren't anywhere at all? The artist, the Firesign Theater. And my guest is Paul Germain. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, people have heard me talk about it before, but I've been volunteering at the Writers Guild Foundation, and I have been cataloging some of your collection.
Oh.
So, Recess. So, Rugrats. Lloyd in Space, which is a show I did not know about, but when I told my friend that I was working on your stuff, he's like, wait, I love Lloyd in Space. So that was kind of exciting to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to watch it. Like, I'm going to have to hunt it down if I can watch it anywhere.
It was on ABC Disney back in the day.
ABC Disney, so. Okay. And we do have a mutual acquaintance in Phil Proctor.
Yes.
Who was a voice on the Rugrats.
Right.
But it sounds like this is the beginning of this. This is the reason he got a job. So let's talk about this album.
Well, when I was a teenager back in the day, and that was a long time ago in the 1970s, I had a friend who was into comedy albums, and he played Firesign Theater albums for me. And this one, How Can You Be in Two Places at Once When You're Not Anywhere at All, and Don't Crush That Dwarf, Hand Me the Pliers were the two that I remember.
Yeah.
But I loved them. I especially loved this one because it was like American history in a 22-minute compact form. It was like everything. It commented on everything, including, references to LA, where I was from, where we were living at the time. So it felt like it was my whole life and my history and everything about it all compacted into this tiny little package. And I love that.
I mean, I like it too, and I like that we had an opportunity to just kind of listen to it together. For those who haven't heard it, the one side is the side A is exclusively sketch, but not. There aren't tracks. There are no tracks in this. It's just it flows in one into the other. And side B is a Nick Danger, their third eye, or he's a private eye, but Nick Danger third eye, full like fake radio play, which is so good and filled with a bunch of brilliant stuff, including people reading one another's lines and fucking up over and over again, which I love so much. So as a teenager though, how much of it, what were you reacting to then as opposed to what you react to a little bit later? Are you still reacting to the same stuff?
I feel like it's, listening to it now, 40 years later, like it doesn't, my reaction to it isn't all that different from what I remember in high school.
Okay.
It's a little bit different. There are a few references that I get now that I didn't get then.
Sure.
But mostly I just love the fact that it seemed to be commenting on how things, it starts out with this parody of, or this weird used car dealer named Ralph Spoilsport, who was distinctly a reference to a guy named Ralph Williams who had all these car dealerships in LA when I was a kid. And I think he was, as I recall, he was busted for some kind of illegal stuff and they closed his places some years later. But anyway, they had car dealerships everywhere. And you would hear him on, like daytime TV, like after school television, he would be on all the time, hawking used cars.
Yeah.
And so it starts out with a reference to that, and that's kind of cool because it completely brings you into it's like something that you already knew. It's like, for me, it was something I already knew, and it kind of guides me in, and then from there it takes off into this weird trip down the history of the United States, where this guy is changing channels. So sometimes a sketch will go into another sketch by some otherworldly hand turning the channel of a television, and suddenly you're in another world, but it's just another aspect of history. So it's like the whole history of the United States with references to movies and references to World War II, and it's just crazy.
And we're supposed to, what I love is that, like, if you get it and you lock into what is happening, this album makes more sense. If it takes you a while to get there, it's harder. Because when I first heard it as a kid, I did not know what the hell was going on.
Right, but that's part of the fun. Because I remember my friend said, there's a lot of stuff you're not going to get, but when you listen to it the 10th time, you're going to get some of the stuff that you didn't get before. And there was always more. Yeah. There was always something that there's like people talking at the same time, and you're hearing one guy's voice up front, and that's pretty cool. But then maybe you listen to it for the 5th time, and when you're doing that, suddenly you notice you hear one of the guys in the background, you say, "Oh, there's another joke."
I know.
And you didn't get it before. So it's just layered and layered and layered. It's really fun.
I love that about it. So we're supposed to then assume that so his car is a home. His home is a car. They're one and the same. But also that when you change the channels on his giant entertainment system, we seem to be floating through reality. We
Right.
seem to be changing reality entirely. The thing that is so perfect about an album like this is you could not do this visually. There would be no point.
Yeah.
There is no way.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So you are going to make these dreamlike logical leaps that are your own. I think that that's kind of probably different for everybody.
Well, one of the things that I think is really fun about it, I mean, for me, as somebody who makes television shows and movies, and that's what my career's been, one of the things you learn is that if you really do a thing right, you kind of tailor it to your medium. Mm-hmm. Television's different than movies. Movies and television are different than plays, etc. Right? Well, the great thing about the Firesign Theater is they were doing an album. It feels like it's not just somebody went and recorded them. You know, like it's not somebody's stand-up routine that somebody's recording.
Right.
It's an actual. It's like a production. It's like a little piece of storytelling, but perfectly tailored to being on an album, right? And mixed and kind of put together, and it feels like an adventure. To me, it's like watching a movie, but it's in some ways better. And as you say, because it's just an audio medium, you're kind of imagining what's going on. And you're right. If they tried to visualize it, I think they toyed with that, right? A couple of times.
I mean, they definitely have made visual versions of some of their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but my recollection is it didn't work as well because it's just so perfect for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, this was a time period when you could do that. Now, like, again, if you want to do improv or sketch, most of the time it's on podcast. Nobody bothers to commit something to a thing with a limited time frame or commit to something that costs this much money to put out. Of course, they had a record deal, so good for them. That's great. That's why it happened. But they knew their limitations and worked within them so much. And
well, sometimes I've noticed, like sometimes I'll listen to comedy podcasts. I don't listen to that many of them. It's not generally my thing, but when I do listen to them, some of the times I notice that things feel kind of there's a lot of because it's just entirely improvised and kind of just people talking. It feels like sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, I'm kind of with this, and then I kind of drift off and I'm not with it so much. When you're listening to the Firesign Theater, every second is important, and you go, wait a minute, go back, I didn't hear that. You know, every little piece of it's important.
Yeah, which is
to telling this overall story. It's really planned, and that's something I love about it.
The bonus of us sitting here listening to it was that I couldn't distract myself with anything. All I was doing was pulling up the Wikipedia to make sure any references I might have missed, which I knew there were a ton, and I know there are more. But yeah, it was nice kind of having an active listening with this, because it's easy. If I were alone, and I was earlier, I could just be like, oh, I got to do this right now. No,
you can't
you really can't do that.
It
It has to be active. And we talk about that a lot, but I also love that it's just so much, it is about the medium. It's about, this is a thing you have to sit and listen to.
It's really cool.
Yeah. There's, do you have a favorite, like, segment of side one?
I think I have to say there's so many parts of it that there's so many things I remember. I mentioned to you earlier that I really love it when the main guy, who you told me his name, what is he called? Babe?
His name Babe, according to Wikipedia.
I don't know, but he's kind of this. You kind of get the impression he's this everyman, and sometimes he's listening to the thing, and sometimes he's a part of it, and sometimes he's taken in by it, and like he's going along with it, and sometimes he's observing it. It's very surreal. But what I remember loving about it is when he asked the question. They're talking about history, and he says, "Who am us anyway?" And that's one of my favorite lines. But that's a part I really love. I love the Ralph Williams or the Ralph Spoilsport stuff because it just reminds me of when I was a kid and listening to those crazy car ads on TV. You know, and just thinking, what does this mean? Because you were listening to, you're a little kid, and one of the things they emphasize is that he's constantly spouting numbers, and they just seem like, when you're a kid, you're listening to, what do these numbers mean? They're just like 1,387. You know, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So it just really captures that. So that's a part I really love, the Ralph Spoilsport stuff.
What kind of comedy albums did you have in the house as a kid, if any?
My parents maybe had one of those, like you mentioned, we were talking earlier, and you mentioned the There was The First Family. There was this comedy album about the Kennedy administration, and I think my parents probably had that in the house. Mostly, they didn't have comedy at all. They weren't really necessarily comedy people. I really got that from Friends, you know?
Yeah.
I was introduced to all that stuff from Friends. And just being in high school and you'd hear about it, you hear about the latest Steve Martin album, you hear about Cheech and Chong. You know, they were all appealing to different aspects of comedy. It was more like, well, what are you into? Are you into like getting high and you're listening to Cheech and Chong? Are you interested in politics? You know, everything was different, right? So lots of different things.
What about this stuck? Like, why was this good for your brain? Like, what kind of a kid were you that this was like?
I was a geeky, nerdy kid, and what was great about this is it was like, you know, honestly, it was like an introduction to college.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I didn't particularly like high school, and I was always thinking I want to get to college because that's where it's going to be really great.
Okay.
And this felt like what college would be, and in a lot of ways, it was.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it is an entire first half of an album that is about what the fuck is reality and how do we... It can be about that anyway, by the way. Like, it can also just be a string of dumb old Marx Brothers like jokes. I mean, it's perfect. That what's on the cover is perfect.
Yeah.
It's a perfect album cover.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's so much about, you know, changing reality. It is like a kind of a perfect example of what college would be for you, I feel like.
Right.
And then also on the other half of it is an entirely nostalgic piece that is also perfect for college, because the second you get to college you end up a little homesick. It's kind of a...
Yeah, and you're also getting into like old movies, you know. I love to... One of the things that they're dealing with is these... It used to be back in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up, that there, you know, late at night there would be these, they would show old black and white movies, and there'd be like a host and he would be introducing, and it was just local television. A lot of what was on local television, they just play old black and white movies. And I loved watching those. And there's this whole section of this where they're watching their parody of an old World War II movie, which they call Babes in Khaki, which I'd forgotten. I didn't remember that, but then when I heard it, I go, oh, yeah, I remember that. And it feels like one of those old movie shows that you'd see on late at night where they'd play some old World War II picture.
Yeah. This is the first Firesign one you heard, though. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was. I mean, I don't remember for certain, but I think it was, because I remember we got through that whole opening first side, which is just unreal. It's just like this surreal trip through America, and then the second side is this like, it's like kind of a parody of Casablanca or something, something like that, an old detective movie. And you're watching, and I remember that being such two really satisfying sections that were kind of connected but kind of not connected.
Right, and specifically on the Nick Danger side, at one point he says, "Oh, didn't I say that on the other side of the album?" Yeah, and they rewind the damn thing. Holy crap! There's so much going on.
There's so much going on.
All jokes, by the way, that like if I'm a guy who wants to release my own comedy album, but I'm like, I have to be aware that jokes like that have already been made. Like, I don't. There's so much that like they've just did first.
Yeah, they planted their flag there for sure.
They really, really did. There's a really dumb joke. Oh, well, they're all really dumb, and I love that about them. Honestly, is that somebody says either the word ruthlessly or ruthless, and one of those jokes that you might not hear the first time is something in the background is like, I wonder what happened to Ruth. It's so stupid. Right. Or I wonder where Ruth is what they said.
I wonder where Ruth is. Yeah.
Again, you might not catch it because there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, but you can listen to it again and again, and each time, you know, the whole point of these albums was you could keep listening to them over and over. You can listen to a Steve Martin album over and over, but you were just going to be hearing his jokes, right? If you were listening to this, you would pick up a whole thing and say, "Oh, I never heard that before," because there's voices going on simultaneously and stuff happening in the background. So rich.
If you were listening to it with friends, was it just over stereo, or did you both have headphones? I'm curious.
No, we were listening on as I recall, I have a particular friend that I used to listen to this, and I think we'd head over to his house and he'd put it on the I think it was his older brot's stereo.
Okay.
I was the oldest in my family, but my friend was the youngest in his, so we'd go over, and his older brother was so cool, you know. He was so mature and older and doing cool stuff. And so we'd listen to his stereo, you know, and pop on the album and just sit back, and maybe we'd get high, maybe we wouldn't, I don't know. It's a long time ago.
So and the other one was Don't Crush That Dwarf. hand me the
Right.
pliers, right? Which is one that people have also, I think the first person to recommend it to me is a gentleman named Jeremy Guskin. That's how this whole thing got started on the podcast. And he said, this is a good intro album. It's a little less, specifically Don't Crush That Dwarf, only because I think it's a little more accessible in terms of if you're not familiar with their stuff. Because this I heard when I was a kid, but had no idea what was happening.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me. And the more I listen to it, the more I love it. Good God. But there's so much there's so much satire on there that maybe people might misunderstand a little bit.
Yeah.
Including an entire song that is all racial epithets.
Yeah.
But it's being done with a point. They didn't just do it randomly for no friggin' reason.
It didn't feel like racism. It felt like it was commenting on race.
100%, yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. It's stuff like that always sticks out to me in terms of wow, that is a chance to take, but it's also a way to plant your flag. If that's the kind of satire you're gonna do, you've kind of established anything's on the table right now. Is there a way? Can you paint draw a direct line from Firesign to your own writing, or is it just something that was in you?
Let me put it this way: when I was listening to it, when I was a teenager, I wasn't thinking I was going to go into making TV shows and films. It wasn't. I loved it. I loved that stuff. It was something that at the time I was really into still photography and I would take a lot of pictures, but I wasn't really imagining that I was going to be in some kind of storytelling medium. That's not what I thought my life was going to be. But as I went into it, it was always something in the back of my mind. So when I was doing Rugrats, especially when I was going through the casting process and deciding who would play different parts, I was always interested in people that were doing comedy that had to do with storytelling.
Okay.
Right? And I found out, I think I was looking through, as I recall, this is a long time ago, but I think I was looking through a book of actors, photographs of actors and, with their names on, what I'm talking about, where they'd have their they have those.
Their headshots?
Their headshots, right. And I was looking at headshots and I saw Phil Proctor. I go, Phil Proctor? From Firesign Theater? Really? And so I looked him up and I got him to come in and we cast him, right? And I was always thinking of people that could do that kind of thing. And could I was hoping would take what we were writing and take it in another direction. And that's kind of how those shows worked,
Right.
We always recorded the voices. The first step of our process was the screenwriting, obviously. We'd write very detailed scripts. Then we'd go and record the actors because I didn't want the actors to be tied to whatever some artist had drawn. I wanted the artist to draw according to what the actors did.
All right.
So I would get great performances from the actors. And so letting the actors go with the dialogue, we'd stick to the dialogue, but within that, they could take it where they wanted and go with it. And it was that was part of our process. So I think I got that from them. I always thought of animation as a great radio show with pictures attached to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Did you have an idea for what you wanted him to do or what he might bring to it, or are you just like, I don't care, this is Phil Proctor?
No, I did. I kind of had a sense of what I wanted him to do. He was playing Betty's husband, Betty's husband on the show. The father of Phil and Lil. That was the character he played, and that guy was kind of a milk toasty kind of guy, and so that was sort of the part. But he brought his own Philness to it, I remember. And I remember sitting in the booth and going, again, and he would get crazier and crazier. I
love that. Well, I mean, he's a guy who I think with an improv background and stuff and just a willingness to play as a voice actor, you can't get much better than that. Like the other day
really
when I was recording him for my album, he's like, can I try this as British? And I'm like, yeah, of course you can try this as British. And it worked out 10 times better. And it was just the character of the Reed changed just because he knows. The man also speaks untold amounts of languages. He speaks Russian. He speaks...
Really?
Yes.
I did not know
He's insanely just well-read and educated, and it's annoying. It's very annoying because he's too smart. I would like to point out, I think my favorite joke, because again, I should also point out to anybody who thinks this might be, like I said, it was unwieldy for me at first, but there's plenty, if you like old just jokes, there are plenty of just jokes in it. It's not just the joke, the line, Lincoln didn't die in vain. He died in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Might be my favorite joke on it, because I
It's got
like...
some great stuff. It's just there's so many to choose from.
And it's a groaner, but it's also like, that's kind of my deal. I love that. Is there anybody else that you brought on to Rugrats or any of your other shows who you were a fan of before?
Well, yeah. There's a guy. The guy who played Stu was Jack Riley, who if you're my age, you would have remembered him from the old
The Bob Newhart Show?
the Bob Newhart Show, the
Yeah.
original one, where he played Mr. Carlin, who was this insane guy who just was so mean, and he would have this really dry delivery, and it was just hilarious, right? And I remembered it from when I was a teen, like 10 years before that, or 15 years before that, and I heard him on a commercial. There was he and this other guy did this commercial for, I don't even remember what it was for anymore, and I would hear it on the radio. They just had this dry kind of comedy routine for some product.
Okay.
And I heard it and I thought, oh my God, that's Mr. Carlin. I'm going to get him to play Stu.
Yeah.
And I got him. I tracked him down and we offered him the job and he came in and he did it. And so what we had in Stu was a guy who could just do this perfectly dry delivery if we wanted him to. And then when he got emotional, which was sort of him stepping out of his comfort zone as an actor. I mean, he didn't like doing things where I'd have him yell or go, get really upset, but that made it great. And he would do this dry delivery. I remember in our Passover episode of Rugrats, there's a line where he says, this bitter herb, what does it mean? And it was just hilarious because it was so dry. It made me laugh. So that he was really great at that. So we had a few, we had a few people who did that. The babies were all played by women who did kid voices.
Right. Yeah.
So they weren't, for the most part, people who had been famous before, although some of them went on to do a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Elizabeth Daly. I knew it was her. Could not.
E.G. Yeah.
Yes. E.G. Daly. Right. So that's her voice almost, though, which is so funny because you watch her.
It isn't.
Yeah,
She's doing a little bit of a voice, but not much. But she was just amazing because she could make these cute little baby noises that were like amazing. You just
insane.
go, that really sounds like a baby. So she was really stunning. There's an actress, Kath Soucie, who's really great, who can do a lot of different voices and was a regular on the show. We had the woman who played Chucky, really stunning. She died recently.
Oh.
She was great. A lot of great people.
Do you mind talking about how you got into animation? Because I mean, we talked briefly about it off mic, but
Oh, sure. So I was working for a producer by the name of Jim Brooks, who was a famous TV producer, but he had, about the time that I came to work for him, he'd just completed production on Terms of Endearment, which, those of you old enough will remember won 5 Academy Awards that year. And I came in post-production on that movie, and I had no idea what I was walking into. Nobody did. But Brooks was this guy who within the year that I started working for him had become kind of the biggest guy in Hollywood in the early 80s. So he was like this giant with one foot in film and another foot in television, right? But he had taken a break from doing television and was doing movies. And then after the second or third year I was working for him, he decided he was going to do another TV show. And he found this British comedian who, this kind of one of those chameleon types who can do any voice and play any character. And that was Tracy Ullman, who had never done anything in the United States before. She was about my age, right? At the time. I mean, she was a kid like me. And she was kind of well known in England, but not here. Brooks brought her here, and at the time we had just come to work. He'd just set up shop at 20th Century Fox, and they had just started the Fox network. So he went to the Fox network and said, "I want to do a show based around this young British comedian," and they said, "Yes, sir." I mean, because he was powerful enough to do that.
Crazy.
So he started developing the Tracy Ullman show, and while he was developing it, he said he was. I remember we were in his office one time. He was talking about what he wanted the show to be, and there were a bunch of people around taking notes. Right?
Yeah.
He was a very powerful guy, and he said, I want to do I want the show to be a variety show, but with little sitcoms, little 7-minute sitcoms, not sketches, but a little more fully realized pieces. And then between them, I want to do interstitial little animated bits. And someone said, okay, what do you want to do for this animation? So he said, He's sitting there thinking, and in his office, someone had given him an original cartoon from the Life in Hell strip, that Matt Groening strip in the old LA Reader at the time. It wasn't even the LA Weekly. The Reader doesn't exist anymore, but it was at the time. And someone had given him the original, the artist's original board from one of those shows, which were about the size of a poster. And he had it mounted in a frame on his wall. And he said, let's get that guy.
Holy shit.
Which is, well, I was a big fan of those cartoons in the old LA Reader. So I was 24 years old. I jumped up and I said, oh, that's a great idea. I love that guy's work, which is true. I was just enthusiasm, right? And Brooke said, great, go do it. You're in charge. And I said, me? And he said, yeah, we need about a minute a week. And I said, but I don't know anything about animation. And he said, well, you better learn. So I kind of got thrown into this thing I didn't know anything about. I mean, I was a live action film guy. I'd gone to UCLA Film School and I'd learned live action. I didn't know anything about animation at all.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thrown into this and I thought, well, how do I make a cartoon? And I also knew that the animation was going to be actually executed in Korea, because that's how things were in those days, that you do certain parts of the cartoon in the United States, but mainly it was shipped off to Korea to be animated because, for cost reasons. And
it's all keyframes here? Is that still kind of how they do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's keyframes, and you do the important creative aspects of the thing. What it's you design it, you do the models, you do all these steps, but you don't actually animate it here. It's actually the guys doing the individual cells or frames or whatever they were. In those days they were on cells. Now it's done in computers, but in those days it was cells. That's done in Korea. Okay. And I thought, how is that a joke going to be delivered if we do that? I mean, how is it going to work? Yeah. We've got people executing these jokes who don't speak English and don't, they're following instructions, but they don't know really what they're animating, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
At least in a story sense, right?
Sure.
So I thought, how do I control that medium? I said, I'm working for people who it better be good or they're not going to be satisfied. So I thought, how do I make this work? And what I came up with is, I thought, well, if we write a really good radio play, right, and I record it and I can make people laugh just listening to it without the pictures, then it won't get screwed up. And so that's what we did. We would write a little script. Yeah. Matt and I would go into his office and we'd write a little 2-page script on, Microsoft Word or whatever. And then I would go and I would record the actors and I'd edit the tracks together. Checkerboarding, I don't know if you know what I mean, but that means overlapping the dialogue, like on an A-B roll, back and forth, so that there was a lot of overlapping dialogue. It moved really, really fast,
Makes
right?
sense. Okay.
And then that would, and I would edit that, and I would take it to the animators, and I'd go, okay, this run of dialogue here, you don't change it. You don't edit it. You don't open it up. You don't close it down. You leave it just as is. The timing of it is what I want.
Okay.
But then this visual gag here, you can do what you want, because I can't tell you how to do a visual. I can't design that. You design that. But the audio part is going to be just as I've got it here.
Wow.
And that's how we did it, and it worked. And then when I went to do Rugrats a couple of years later, I did it the same way. We would write the scripts, I would record the tracks, we would edit them really carefully, just the sound before there's any picture, and you would be laughing at the radio show. Yeah. At just the sound of it would make you laugh. And if I had that, I felt like I could know that the animation wasn't, it got more complicated from there, but that's how it started.
Wow. There's a lot to cover right now because, okay, number one, I mean, it's great that both you and Matt Groening are, I mean, he's well known as a Firesign fan, so I mean, it's...
Oh, is he?
Yes.
I didn't even know that.
That's so funny. So the two of you have this influence. Did he or does he know that he was essentially a dart on a dartboard in that situation? Because that's insane.
Well, I don't think it was a dart on a dartboard, but it was he was a guy who was a newspaper cartoonist. He wasn't an animator. Yeah. And his newspaper cartoons were fantastic. They were hilarious, right? but that was how it all started. So I think he knows that story. I'm not sure.
It's just nuts to me. I also, the more you're talking about it, my memories of Rugrats, because I definitely grew up on that show, it was just how incredibly dense it looked, but also as a kid, I wasn't thinking about sound design. I now have to go back and rewatch because it's a very dense show. So much was happening and packed in. But when you say that, so that means if you get people to laugh at just the audio, like how.
And I'm talking about just dialogue.
Yeah,
by the way,
just the dialogue. No,
yeah.
Okay, so no, that's even more complicated to me. Okay, so how does that? Wow, what is the process in writing something like that then? Like,
we were writing the show as if we were writing a live-action sitcom.
Okay.
If you look at a Rugrats script, friend, and you have been looking at
Yes.
them, if you just take a second and look at the script, it reads like any script for any live-action show. It's the same with The Simpsons. They feel like you're looking at a live-action show, and that's very purposeful, right? Then with animation, what you do is, really, this is true with just about any animation. You're recording if it's animation based on people talking, right, or voices, which most is. I mean, there's some animation that's silent and it's just about the artwork. But for my money, for what I did, and for the TV stuff that I was doing, it was all about dialogue, right? All about communication between characters, right? So we would write that, and it reads just like a movie. If you look at it, it's very, very much like a little movie. Right? And then we would record the voices, and then we would edit them, and then it would be animated. The animation would be done to the tracks, right?
Yeah.
So the animators are they've got them on they've got headphones, they're listening to cassettes of them, and they're animating and doing their storyboards to the tracks, right? And then that goes overseas, and they do the animation, and when it comes back, it's just all the visuals with dialogue, no other sound. There is no other sound, right?
All right.
Because when you think about how animation's done, it's people like we're doing sitting in a studio talking on mics. That's it. There's no footsteps.
Yeah.
There's no claps.
Right.
There's nothing. There's just dialogue and picture. And then you manufacture everything else. That's not how a live action movie's done.
Right.
Live action movie, they're picking up the action. Somebody slugs somebody, all that kind of stuff. You might have a punch, you might not. Some of that stuff is put in afterward, but in animation, everything's put in afterward.
All Foley stuff.
All the sound is either Foley or sound effects.
Nuts.
That are, like it's all kinds of different things. Yeah.
That's crazy. I guess I did expect it that what you were saying was that all the audio was there first, but it's just dialogue. That's
just dialogue.
That's great though. I mean that gives you more time to concentrate strictly on getting the story across that way.
Right.
And that's fascinating to me. And I guess I will then. I'm gonna when I go back this Saturday, I will dig more. She'll let me sit and read a script.
Sure, why not?
Why the hell not? I'm there for free. Let's see. Do you have a favorite? I know we didn't re-listen to the Nick Danger part today. Do you remember anything of it that stood out to you as a kid or
gosh.
It's okay if not, because again, we only revisited
I like
the first
opening.
today.
There's an opening narration where the guy, Los Angeles, he walks again by night. And there's this whole opening thing that seems like film noir. I was a big film noir fan.
Okay.
I loved, those old detective movies from the 50s. And they were picking up on that kind of a thing, but almost from an old radio show kind of point of view, a way of doing it, but it feels like that. And I love that parody of like the narrator, the overly serious narrator. Yeah.
That's perfect. So we're gonna talk. We got this one. You Don't Crush That Dwarf. Did you go on to like collect all the Firesigns, or did you just have a few that were just part of your life?
I think I still got them. There was one, a later one. I can't remember what it was. One that had one. It had kind of a cartoony cover like this. But it was the one that had the interspecies athletic competition. Do you know the one I mean?
I do, yeah.
I can't remember which one it was. It was, but this is much later. I think it was done in the 80s. I think. I'm not sure. But I don't even remember which album it was. I don't remember what it was called.
I'm trying to pull it up now. So, yeah, it might have been. Oh, is it this one?
What's that one?
Well, it's hard to see now. No, is it the one with the dinosaur on the cover? No.
I think it's that one.
It is this one. Okay, yeah. In the next world, you're on your own.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the next world, you're on your own. That's the one that has an interspecies athletic competition between the dinosaurs and the insects for who will have supremacy over the Earth. It's great. It's really good.
And that one is 1975. My God, that's because they were.
Oh, it's
releasing-
75?
They were, yeah. Apparently, they were.
Okay,
well,
so it's
sometimes they
earlier
released,
than I thought.
They released 2 albums a year for a couple years because they're insane. Good God, I guess I didn't realize that. That's because we're not at that point
They
yet.
have a parody in that of ABC's Wide World of Sports, which is this baseball game, which is somehow for who's going to inherit the Earth, for which species will inherit the Earth. It's really crazy.
That is fantastic.
So I went. I was really into them. I had a lot of the albums when I was younger, and then as I got older, I kind of moved on to other things and
Sure.
hadn't listened to them for years.
Right, but it's Phil Proctor stuck in your brain by the time you made.
Yeah,
Rugrats.
absolutely. Yeah,
I love that
yeah.
so much. Can I ask you very quickly, and this you can feel free to be like, there's no story there. You're credited on Big. Can you tell me what you were working on Big?
I had a very minor role on Big. I was that script was I was going to say unsolicited, but it wasn't unsolicited. It was a script that came into us from an agent, and I was a script reader for Brooks for years, among my other jobs that I had there. So I read hundreds and hundreds of scripts, and for anybody who reads scripts for a living, they'll tell you that maybe 1% of them are tolerable. They're just horrible, most of them. And Big came in, and it was a really good script. And it just stood out because it was such a solid script. My boss and I read it, and we were really excited. But I don't mean Jim Brooks, a guy named Richard Sakai. He and I read it and brought it to Brooks and said, "You got to make this movie. It's really great."
Yeah.
And he brought the 2 writers in house. It was
Gary Ross
and Ann Spielberg, right?
there
Who
you
is Steven Spielberg's sister.
Okay.
So they wrote it together. I think it's the only time those 2 worked together. They wrote the script. Brooks brought him in. He worked on this. He worked on the script with them for a while to kind of tailor it a little bit, and then they hired Penny Marshall and made the movie. And it's a really solid little movie. It's kind of dated now if you watch it. I mean, this movie came out in the mid '80s, so it was a long time ago. But it was a really solid little movie, and we were very proud of it. And I worked mostly on the script a little bit, but I don't even remember what I did. I wasn't very important in that movie. I didn't do much.
That's fine.
I wasn't on set when they made it.
I had to ask because it's one of my favorites. And I recently played Mrs. Baskin on stage. That's a story for another time. But I absolutely did do that. I'm trying to think of some other stuff that were there any cartoons? You didn't know you were going to go into cartooning, but I'm making animation. But was there anything growing up that was like influential?
You know, it's interesting. I wasn't particularly interested in cartoon. I loved Johnny Quest when I was a kid, the original one.
Sure.
I wasn't a big cartoon guy. I loved experimental animation at the time.
Okay.
Gabor Chupo, who I worked for him when I was doing Rugrats, and he did many of the designs for it, and he kind of his company designed the look of the show, and he was he and Arlene Klasky, his wife at the time, who were both owners of the company, were co-creators with me. We all kind of created the show together, and their designs were so. There was nothing like that on TV before they came along. Gabor was trained in Hungary, and he had this really particular look that in some ways could proudly be described as a little bit grotesque and a little bit ugly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've tried to emphasize this to people since then is that we were making a show about babies. If it was going to be cute, no matter what we did.
Yeah.
And so we fought the cuteness every way we could.
Yeah.
We tried to make it look a little grotesque on purpose and a little ugly on purpose to fight the cuteness, because otherwise it was just going to be a cute fest, and who wants to watch it? I wouldn't want to watch that.
No.
So it gave us that was part of what it was designed to do. And I guess I had an understanding of what Gabor's Eastern European sensibility was from the cartoons that were coming into the country in the 1970s that I was seeing that were from Eastern Europe, because they were kind of purposely grotesque in a really cool way.
Well, it's not remembered because it looked boring. You know what I mean? It sticks in your brain
really
because
had
of how friggin' weird they look.
Yeah.
They're insane. And now that you tell me that, I'm then now thinking, I mean, if anybody's ever seen like the Polish version of a film poster you're familiar with, that's that'll at least give you an idea of what an Eastern European's idea of design is, because they're insane. They're great. They kind of tell the story sometimes, but that's kind of the first thing that pops into my head. What about some? So who are some other comedians you were listening? Because I know you mentioned Steve Martin stuff. That was definitely the thing to listen to. Were you listening to?
Oh, absolutely. I loved Steve Martin at the time. Eddie Murphy's a little later. I was actually. Eddie Murphy's kind of a little after. I was already in college and back out again by the time Eddie Murphy caught on. My younger brothers were really into Eddie Murphy. I liked him okay, but it wasn't my thing. I loved I remember when Saturday Night Live first came out, and Steve Martin hosted the first episode, as I recall. I loved that. Comedy, interestingly, that was not kind of my main focus.
Right.
I mean, I can't. It's interesting because I'm always telling people I can't stand movies. I love movies. I can't stand movies that are too serious, where there's no sense of humor in the movie. I think it kind of kills them.
Yep.
And for me, there's no reason why anything shouldn't have humor in it. And so I'm always looking for comedy, but it's not so much stand-up comedy that's my thing. I'm more interested in storytelling.
Yeah.
And comedy that tells the story, where the joke comes naturally out of the material, where it isn't a joke for its own sake. And that's kind of been my philosophy with the shows that I've been doing. I will gladly kill a good joke on any of my shows if it's getting in the way of the story.
Yeah.
The story is the key.
That would be. I've got to assume that's why animation's your thing, because if you were working in if your day thing, if you were constantly working in like live sitcoms, I have a feeling that gets quashed immediately, right? They're like, no,
right.
joke.
It's joke. Which we never did.
Yeah.
The Simpsons kind of has that a little bit, but even there's a sense that it's telling a story, and the story is what's really important. The Simpsons is great. I'm not saying anything bad about it, but
sure.
But I prefer when the comedy is more baked into the story, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's also an element of all the effort that's being put in. It's a similar, ethic to when you're putting together an album. You have to put a lot of effort into making it and to getting it pressed. All this money. It's the same thing with animation. That there's all these people who have to work very hard, and changing is not going to happen. There's not a lot of. You don't go back and edit a ton.
Well,
of a
they
cartoon.
do. The Simpsons was famous for wanting to do topical jokes, and so
and
they would
out.
insert. They would write up a joke because of something that happened this week, and they would call them and say, "We want this animated in," and the animators want to kill them because they don't have to reanimate some section. But they do it. They did it all the time.
Yeah,
and I think they still do.
So in a case like that, I guess that's an exception.
And yeah, you think about the shows that people really love. A lot of them are very they're really pushing to get everything that's happening this week, this moment, right now in the show.
Hard part with that is, there's a little less longevity to those kinds of things.
I think so too. I think if something's too topical, I'm always on my shows. I always stress things being a little. We do a topical joke now and then. We had a Dr. Kevorkian joke in one episode of Rugrats, believe it or not. But we tended generally to stay away from really topical jokes.
Yeah.
We would just try to hit things that were general and kind of classic, and then we felt that the show would last forever, and it's kind of proven to be true.
Yeah, people
can come back and watch it 30 years later, and it feels like it's happening now.
Right. Well, I can tell even from looking just at the titles of Recess that like all the reference points of the titles were either like classic movies or just some like stuff that would not necessarily be that accessible to the kids who were watching.
We were all old movie geeks. So it didn't matter because the point of the show wasn't that.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you could watch the show. What we were hoping is we'd pick up kids, we'd pick up their parents. So if Dad's walking through the living room and he catches it, maybe he'd stop and listen. He'd go, "Hey, that's pretty cool," and then he'd sit down and he'd be an audience member. We were always looking to do that. In Rugrats, it worked in spades. It also did in our other shows, but they were a little more maybe kidding just the audience they intended to hit, which was 6 to 12-year-old kids at the time.
Sure. So is animation still your main thing?
I don't even know if it was my main thing at the time. I stumbled into animation like slipping on a banana peel. Yeah. It wasn't what I intended to do.
Right.
I always wanted to do live action. And so, my partner and I are always trying to figure out a way to get back into live action, which is where both of us came from.
Yeah.
because we feel more comfortable in it.
Okay.
The hard thing about animation for us is that we don't draw.
Yeah.
And so we're these guys telling everybody else what to do who does draw, and I think they resent it. Here's your pencil, you damn draw it, you know? But anyway, that's so...
Do you have a visual imagination? Like, because
I
some
do.
people don't, you know what I mean? Which blows my mind to hear. But like, I know people who are I'm like, you don't have a visual. So, okay, so you do. So you're, do you
Well,
also...
I like to think I do.
Right.
I've had animators tell me I don't.
Do you have, when you're writing, do you think of the sound effects? Because like, that's actually how I write very
Absolutely.
much. Okay.
I think of the sound effects. I think of how I would shoot it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in my mind, I'm thinking of where I would put the camera
Mm-hmm.
when I'm shooting the thing. I'm often thinking that way.
Yeah.
You tend... It's discouraged in screenwriting generally to give too much direction,
Sure.
too much visual direction.
Sure.
Most of the time, you want it to just flow like a novel where you're not thinking about how you would execute it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I write it, I am thinking about how I'd execute it. And to some extent, I'm designing it. I'm doing it in such a way that it implies kind of how you'd direct the thing if you got to that step.
Right. And I think that's the kind of writing that if you are guided along without your ego being hurt by somebody who just told you what to do, which I think is a lot of that, where it's like, don't tell me where to put the camera. It's like, okay,
And
that's fine.
directors do not like it when
No.
they're given too much instruction about that kind of stuff. They
Right.
say, I can figure this out for myself, Jack. Just tell me what they say.
Yeah, that's fair. I've probably been like that before. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, so I want you to tell me, if let's say somebody listening to this has never heard Firesign, and they don't know anything about it, why listen to this particular album if you think it's recommended as their first listen?
If you love history and you're really interested in storytelling and hearing a story like I am, which is my particular taste, there's nothing like it. There is I can't think of anybody else that tells stories like the Firesign Theater does. So when you're listening to it, you get a picture in your mind of a world. There's like a whole world created in this little in this case, half a side, the one side of one album. You feel like you've gotten an entire world created. And I think that's fantastic. I love that.
There's also something to this idea of the concept of, oh, you're trapped in a car the whole time. There is this weird, like, bottle feeling to it, I feel like. Because it's like, no, have this whole half of an album, so you're stuck here. Listen to it.
Well, I only partially agree with you because... Okay, so for example, do you remember, for those people who remember, oh God, what's it called? That kid's book, the one with the, where the wild things are.
Oh,
remember
sure,
where the
yeah.
wild things are? You remember how he gets in that boat and then the boat kind of grows into a jungle and all of a sudden he's in a jungle and the boat's gone? That's what this album feels like to me.
Yeah.
He starts out getting in a car
and
he turns on the radio and then the radio kind of takes over and he's suddenly inside the radio and the car's forgotten. You don't even remember that there was a car.
100%.
That's why it doesn't feel like a bottle to me. It feels like suddenly it feels like I put on my headphones and I'm listening to an album and suddenly the album's gone and I'm just in a place.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me. And that's what the best movies do to you too.
That's true. You
forget
right.
that you're watching a movie.
It does feel that way. I guess conceptually, I overthink it. So conceptually, if you know it's that, then it does change your perception of it. I kind of tend to forget that, but you're absolutely right. You do not remember that once the action
once it gets going, you don't know where you
He's
started.
in the middle of war. It's just...
And suddenly the car dealer is reading the last chapter of Ulysses. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask him what the hell that was all about. There are questions I have for Phil every time.
I want to hear his answers.
So this is gonna come out in a few weeks, and I don't know if you got anything to promote or where people can find you online. But if you do,
I am, and some friends are about to start a crowdfunding campaign for a show that we want to shoot, a family show that we want to, a kids show really, about a bunch of kids and their adventures in a backyard.
Okay.
And I don't have a title for it. We had a working title, but we just found out we can't use it. It's too similar to something else.
Damn it.
So we have to change it. So I can't tell you what it is.
Sure.
But it's going to come out probably late in the summer. At least the crowdfunding campaign, which might be on, I don't know what crowdfunding site we're going to use, but it looks like we're going to do that. And we're getting ready. So I'll let you know when I get closer.
Yeah, by the time that happens, let me know, and I'll put an ad for it in the thing.
Sounds good.
I would love to let people know. Well, again, thank you so much. This is
My pleasure.
You're welcome back anytime to talk about whatever the hell we want, including Big. We can just talk about Big for now. But I do want to let people know to follow me on Instagram at Jason Klamm, JasonKlamm, if only because that's where I'm chronicling all my work as an extra again. Hashtag the professional blur. I've said this before, but if you follow me there, maybe there'll be enough interest in me writing a book so I can quit doing extra work. That's how that works. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, have a good thing. Comedy on Vinyl is a production of StolenDress Entertainment. It is produced by Mike Warden and is hosted and edited by Jason Klamm. Our theme song was composed and performed by Richard Levinson. You can email us at podcast@comedyonvinyl.com. You can also send snail mail to StolenDress Entertainment, P.O. Box 805, Burbank, California, 91503. Subscribe to Comedy on Vinyl on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Comedy on Vinyl, or find everything in one place at comedyonvinyl.com. A major portion of Comedy on Vinyl has been underwritten by Stand Up Records. Please visit standuprecords.com for all your comedy needs and tune in to the new Stand Up Records channel available on the Roku, where you can also find select episodes of this podcast. Visit StolenDress.com to listen to our other podcasts, watch videos, and imbibe freely of our multimedia content going back 15 plus years.